My father died believing he was the luckiest man alive. That's what he said to me 3 days before the stroke took him, sitting in his favorite armchair, the one with the worn leather armrest where his hand had rested for 37 years, looking out at the garden my mother had planted when they first bought the house. "I'm the luckiest man alive, Jenny," he said, his voice already a little slurred from the mini-strokes we didn't know were coming. "I have everything a man could want." I smiled and kissed his forehead, and I carried that lie with me to his funeral. My name is Jennifer Morrison, and I'm 43 years old. This is the story of how my family, my mother, my 2 brothers, and I kept a secret so devastating, so completely world-shattering, that we made a pact when I was 15 years old to take it to our graves. We almost succeeded, but secrets, I've learned, have a half-life. They decay slowly, poisoning everything they touch, until one day you wake up and realize the person you've become is built entirely on a foundation of rot. Let me take you back to the beginning, to when I still believed my family was normal. I grew up in Millbrook, Connecticut, one of those picture-perfect New England towns where everyone knows everyone, where the fall leaves actually look like postcards, and where secrets fester behind white picket fences like infections behind a smile. My father, Robert Morrison, was a high school history teacher. For 39 years, he taught American history at Millbrook High, and he was beloved. Former students would stop him at the grocery store to tell him he'd changed their lives. He had a way of making the past feel alive, relevant, urgent. My mother, Catherine, was a nurse at Millbrook General. She worked in pediatrics, and she had this gift, this ability to calm frightened children with just her voice. I remember watching her once in the ER when I'd broken my arm at 12, seeing her kneel beside a screaming toddler, and within seconds, the child was quiet, mesmerized by whatever magic my mother possessed. They were good people. That's what everyone said. Salt of the earth, our neighbors would say. The kind of people who restore your faith in humanity. I had 2 brothers, Michael, 2 years older than me, and David, 3 years younger. Michael was the golden child, student body president, varsity basketball, early acceptance to Yale. David was the artist, sensitive and quiet, always sketching in his notebook, living in his own world. And I was the middle child, the mediator, the one who kept the peace. We were happy. That's what I remember most clearly from my childhood. Genuine, uncomplicated happiness. Sunday dinners around the table where Dad would tell stories about his students and Mom would laugh so hard she'd cry. Summer vacations to Cape Cod where we'd spend entire days on the beach, coming home sunburned and salty and completely content. Christmas mornings that felt like pure magic. I was 15 when everything changed. It was October 1997. I remember because the leaves were at their peak, those impossible reds and golds that make Connecticut famous, and I was supposed to be at soccer practice. But Coach Reynolds had canceled because of a teacher's meeting, so I came home 2 hours early. The house was supposed to be empty. Mom was working a double shift. Dad was at school for parent-teacher conferences. Michael was at basketball practice, and David had art club. But when I walked in through the kitchen door, I heard voices upstairs. My mother's voice. And a man's voice I didn't recognize. I froze, my hand still on the doorknob, my soccer bag sliding off my shoulder onto the floor. The rational part of my brain was already making excuses. Maybe it was a colleague from the hospital. Maybe she'd come home sick. Maybe it was nothing. But my body knew before my mind caught up. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, and I felt this wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the flu that was going around school. I should have left. I should have walked back out that door, gone to a friend's house, pretended I'd never come home early. But I was 15, and curiosity is a cruel master at that age. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step creaking in a way I'd never noticed before. The voices were coming from my parents' bedroom. The door was closed, but not all the way. There was a gap of maybe 2 inches, and through it I could see movement, shadows, shapes my brain couldn't immediately process. And then I could. My mother was in bed with a man I'd seen exactly once before, at a hospital fundraiser 6 months earlier. Dr. Richard Hartley, chief of surgery, at Millbrook General. I remembered him because my mother had introduced him to our family, and he'd shaken my father's hand while looking my mother in the eyes in a way that had made me uncomfortable even then, though I didn't know why. Now I knew why. I don't remember backing away from the door. I don't remember going back downstairs or leaving the house. But I remember sitting in the park 3 blocks away, on the swings where I used to play as a child, staring at nothing, my whole body numb. I was 15 years old, and in the space of 5 minutes, my entire understanding of my family, my life, everything I thought was solid and real, had disintegrated like paper and water. I sat there until it got dark. My phone rang 7 times, my mother, increasingly frantic. I didn't answer. I couldn't. What would I say? Hey, Mom, I know you're wondering where I am, but I'm dealing with the fact that I just watched you destroy our family. Finally, at 8:30, Michael found me. He'd been driving around looking for me after Mom called him in a panic. He pulled up in his beat-up Honda, got out, and sat on the swing next to me. You okay? He asked. I looked at him, my big brother, my protector, the person who'd taught me to ride a bike and helped me with algebra and walked me to school every day until I was old enough to go alone. And I made a decision that would shape the next 28 years of my life. I saw Mom, I said. With Dr. Hartley. In her bedroom. The swing stopped moving. Michael was completely still, and for a long moment, the only sound was the distant traffic on Route 7 and a dog barking somewhere in the neighborhood. Fuck, he said quietly. Then, how much did you see? Enough. He was quiet again, and then he said something that made my blood run cold. I know. I turned to stare at him. What? I've known for 3 months, Michael said, his voice flat and motionless. I saw them at a restaurant in Hartford. They didn't see me, but I saw them. The way they were looking at each other. I knew. And you didn't tell anyone? Who would I tell, Jenny? His voice cracked slightly. Dad? And what? Destroy him? Destroy our family? I kept hoping it would just end. That it was a phase or whatever. That she'd realize what she was risking and stop. But she didn't stop. No. She didn't stop. We sat there in the dark, 2 kids who'd suddenly been forced to become adults, carrying knowledge that felt like it might crush us. And then Michael said the words that would become our family's motto, our curse, our collective damnation. We can't tell Dad. It would kill him. The next 3 weeks were the hardest of my young life. I walked around in a fog, going through the motions of being a normal teenager while carrying this nuclear secret in my chest. Every dinner was torture, watching Dad serve Mom her favorite portions, watching him kiss her forehead when he came home from work, hearing him tell his friends at church about how blessed he was to have found a soulmate. Michael and I had made a pact that night in the park. We wouldn't tell Dad, but we would tell Mom that we knew. We needed her to understand that she wasn't invisible, that her choices had consequences, that someone was watching. We planned it carefully. We waited for Saturday, when Dad had taken David to a youth art exhibition in New Haven. They'd be gone for at least 5 hours. Michael picked me up from my friend Sarah's house where I'd supposedly been having a sleepover, and we drove home together, our stomachs in knots. Mom was in the kitchen when we walked in, making lasagna, Dad's favorite. The normalcy of the scene made me want to scream. Hey guys, she said, smiling. I thought you both had plans today. We need to talk to you, Michael said. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands shaking. Something in his tone made her freeze, the wooden spoon still in her hand. About what? About Dr. Hartley, I said. The color drained from her face. The spoon fell into the pot with a splash that sent red sauce onto the counter. She grabbed the edge of the sink to steady herself. Sit down, Mom, Michael said, and his voice was so cold, so unlike my gentle brother, that even I flinched. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had thousands of family meals, where I'd done homework while Mom helped me with fractions, where we'd played board games on rainy Sundays. Now it felt like a courtroom. How long have you known? Mom asked quietly, her hands folded in front of her like a prayer. I've known for 3 months, Michael said. Jenny found out 3 weeks ago. Mom looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before, shame, raw and undisguised. Jenny, How long has it been going on? I interrupted. I didn't want her apologies. I wanted the truth. She was quiet for a long time. Then, a year. Just over a year. A year. While we were celebrating Christmas, while we were going on vacation, while Dad was planning their 35th anniversary party. A year of lies, of betrayal, of my mother living a double life so seamlessly that none of us had suspected a thing. Are you in love with him? Michael asked. I don't know, Mom said, and she started crying. I don't know what I am. I know I love your father. I do. But Richard, he makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in years. Your father is a wonderful man, but he's so settled. So content. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing into this life, like I'm just Robert's wife and the kid's mother and I've forgotten who Catherine is. So you're having an affair, I said flatly. You're risking our entire family because you're having a midlife crisis. She flinched like I'd slapped her. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple, Michael said. You made a choice. Every time you meet him, every time you lie to Dad, you're choosing yourself over all of us. What do you want me to do? Mom asked, and now she was crying harder, her face in her hands. What do you want from me? Michael and I looked at each other. We discussed this, planned it out, but now that the moment was here, it felt impossible. Finally, Michael spoke. You have to end it. Today. Right now. You call Dr. Hartley and you end it, and you never see him again except in a professional capacity. And you can never, ever tell Dad. He can never know. Why? Mom asked, looking up at us with red, swollen eyes. Why can't I tell him? Maybe if we talked about it, if we went to counseling. Because it would destroy him, I said, and my voice broke. Mom, you know Dad. You know how he loves. He's not someone who could survive this. He's told us 100 times that you're the only woman he's ever loved, that marrying you was the best decision he ever made. If he finds out you've been cheating on him for a year, it won't just hurt him. It will unmake him. Everything he believes about his life, about love, about the world, it will all be a lie. So, you want me to lie to him for the rest of his life? We want you to spare him, Michael said quietly. We want you to protect him from something that would kill him. Isn't that what you're supposed to do when you love someone? Mom sat there for a long time, crying silently, and I felt this strange mixture of hatred and pity for her. She looked so small, so broken, nothing like the strong, capable woman who'd raised us. Finally, she nodded. Okay, I'll end it. Today, Michael insisted. Today, she agreed. She went upstairs to make the call. Michael and I sat at the kitchen table, not speaking, listening to the muffled sound of her voice through the ceiling. When she came back down 20 minutes later, her eyes were even redder, but she looked calm. It's done, she said. I told him we can't see each other anymore, that it was a mistake. And? I asked. And he understood. He has a wife too. He knew it couldn't last. That should have been the end of it. That should have been the moment we put the pieces back together and moved on. But secrets are never that simple, and lies have a way of multiplying in the dark. For a few months, things seemed almost normal. Mom threw herself into work and family time with an intensity that felt like penance. Dad noticed. He commented several times on how attentive she'd become, how she seemed to want to spend more time together. He thought they were having a second honeymoon phase. We knew she was trying to assuage her guilt. But then, the following spring, David found Mom's journal. He came to Michael's room at 1 a.m. on a Saturday. I was there too. Michael and I had formed a strange bond over our shared secret, meeting regularly to check in, to make sure Mom was keeping her word, to carry the weight together. David knocked quietly and came in, his face pale, holding a small leather-bound notebook. You need to read this, he said. David, what are you doing up? Michael asked. And what is that? It's Mom's journal. I found it in her closet when I was looking for the Christmas decorations. He looked at both of us, and I realized he'd been crying. You guys know something. I can tell. You've been different since last fall, both of you. And Mom's been different too. I thought maybe if I could figure out why. He handed the journal to Michael, open to a page he'd marked. Michael read it, and I watched his face go from curious to horrified. Then he handed it to me. The entry was dated 2 weeks ago. I saw Richard today at the hospital. He was with his wife, and they were laughing about something, and I felt this pain in my chest so acute, I thought I was having a heart attack. I know I made the right choice. I know Michael and Jenny are right that Robert could never survive the truth. But God, it hurts. Because I realized today that I didn't just love Richard. I was in love with him. Maybe I still am. And now I have to see him every day at work and pretend he's nothing to me, pretend that what we had was meaningless, and I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to live the rest of my life pretending to be happy when I'm not. Robert deserves better than a wife who's faking it. But I can't leave him. It would destroy the kids, destroy him, destroy everything we've built. So I'll keep pretending. I'll keep playing the role of the happy wife, and maybe someday I'll believe it again. But today, standing in that hospital hallway watching Richard with his wife, I wanted to die. The three of us sat there in Michael's room, the journal between us like evidence at a crime scene. So she's still in love with him, David said quietly. Even though it's over. David, Michael started. We should have told you. About the affair? David interrupted. Yeah, you should have. How long have you known? We told him everything. My discovery, Michael's earlier knowledge, the confrontation, Mom's promise to end it. David listened without interrupting, his face getting progressively harder. When we finished, he said, So we're all just going to keep lying to Dad forever. We're going to watch him love a woman who's in love with someone else, and we're never going to tell him the truth. To protect him, I said. David, you didn't see him that night at dinner when he was talking about their anniversary. He's so happy. So completely, genuinely happy. If he knew. He deserves to know. David's voice rose, and Michael shushed him quickly, gesturing at the walls. Mom and Dad's room was right below us. He deserves the truth, David said more quietly but with the same intensity. He deserves to make his own choice about whether to stay with her or not. What right do we have to make that decision for him? It was a question that would haunt me for the next 27 years. We argued for hours that night, the three of us going in circles. David wanted to tell Dad. Michael and I were adamant that it would destroy him. Finally, we made David the same offer we'd made to each other. Carry the burden together, protect Dad together, take the secret to our graves together. Think about it, Michael said. Really think about what telling him would do. He's 58 years old. His entire life is built on his love for Mom. If we tell him, what happens? They get divorced, probably. Dad is heartbroken, destroyed, humiliated in a town where everyone knows him. Mom loses her family. We lose the family unit we've always had. And for what? So Dad can have the truth. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss, David. Sometimes protecting people from the truth is the kindest thing you can do. David looked at both of us for a long time. Then he looked down at Mom's journal, still open to that devastating entry. Fine, he said finally. We'll keep the secret. But I'm only doing it because you're probably right that it would destroy him. Not because I think it's the right thing to do. He left the room, taking the journal with him to return it to Mom's closet before she noticed it was missing. That night, the three of us became co-conspirators in the biggest lie of our lives. And from that moment forward, every family dinner, every holiday, every celebration was poisoned by what we knew. The years passed. I went to college, then law school. Michael became a financial analyst in Boston. David got his MFA and became a successful gallery artist in Brooklyn. We all came home for holidays, and we all played our parts. Dutiful children of a happy marriage. Mom kept her word. As far as we could tell, the affair never resumed. But we'd read that journal entry. We knew she was living a half-life, and we watched Dad remain blissfully unaware, talking about how lucky he was, how his marriage was the greatest achievement of his life. And we said nothing. When I got married at 29, Dad gave a speech at my reception about love and partnership that made everyone cry. He talked about how he and Mom were proof that true love exists, that soulmates are real. I looked at Mom while he spoke, and I saw tears running down her face. David, sitting next to me, leaned over and whispered, "Tears of guilt or tears of grief? Place your bets." When Michael's wife had their first child, Dad's first grandchild, Dad and Mom came to visit at the hospital. I watched Dad hold his grandson, watched him look at Mom with so much love, so much joy, so much unshakable faith in their partnership. And I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up from the cognitive dissonance. When David came out as gay at 32, Dad and Mom were both immediately supportive. At the family dinner where David introduced us to his boyfriend Marcus, Dad made a toast. Love is love, and if I've learned anything in my 68 years, it's that finding someone who truly sees you, truly loves you, is the rarest gift in the world. I found it with your mother 38 years ago, and David, I'm so happy you found it with Marcus. After everyone had gone to bed, the three of us, Michael, David, and I, sat in Michael's old room like we used to, and David said, "How does he not see? How can he be that blind?" "Because he doesn't want to see," I said. "Because he's happy. Because his worldview doesn't have room for the possibility that Mom could betray him." "Or because we've all become really good liars," Michael added quietly. And he was right. We had become excellent liars. We'd learned to lie by omission, by misdirection, by enthusiastic participation in the fiction of our perfect family. We'd become our mother's accomplices, and after a while, it started to feel normal. But then, 3 years ago, something happened that cracked the foundation we'd built. Mom got sick. It started with fatigue, then weight loss, then the diagnosis. Stage 3 pancreatic cancer. The prognosis wasn't good, but the oncologist said that with aggressive treatment, chemo, radiation, possibly surgery, she could have a few good years left. Dad was devastated, but determined. He took a leave of absence from school to care for her. He drove her to every appointment, held her hand through every treatment, slept in a chair beside her hospital bed during the rough nights. He was, in short, exactly the devoted husband he'd always been. And Mom let him do it while carrying the weight of her own secrets. 6 months into treatment, on a night when I was staying at the house to help out, Mom asked me to come sit with her. Dad had gone to pick up prescriptions, and we had maybe 30 minutes alone. "Jenny," she said, her voice weak from the latest round of chemo, "I need to tell you something." My heart started pounding. "What is it, Mom?" "The affair with Richard. It didn't completely end when I told you kids it did." The room seemed to tilt. "What?" I broke it off, like I promised. For about 6 months, I really did. But then we started again. Just occasionally. Meeting for coffee, then lunch, then more. It went on until about 5 years ago. That's when it really ended. He retired and moved to Arizona with his wife. I stared at her. This woman I'd thought I knew, this woman I'd been protecting for 18 years, and I felt something inside me break. "You lied to us," I said. "For years. You let us think you'd kept your word, that you'd ended it, that you were trying to make things right. And you were just what? Continuing the affair behind all our backs." "I'm sorry," she said, crying. "I'm so sorry. I was weak. I couldn't let him go. And I thought if you kids didn't know, it wouldn't hurt you. But we did know, Mom. We knew you'd had an affair. We spent 18 years protecting Dad from that truth. And the whole time, you were still lying to all of us." "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I'm sorry. But Jenny, I need you to understand something. I do love your father. I always have. But Richard made me feel like myself. Like Catherine, not just someone's wife or mother. Is that so wrong? To want to feel like a whole person?" "Yes," I said, my voice rising. "Yes, it's wrong when you make a commitment to someone. When you build a life with someone. When you have children with someone. You don't get to have it both ways, Mom. You don't get to have the security and respectability of marriage to Dad, while also having the excitement and romance with Dr. Hartley. That's not how this works." "I know," she said again, and she was sobbing now. "I know I'm selfish. I know I'm terrible. But I'm dying, Jenny. I'm dying, and I can't carry this secret anymore. I need to tell your father. Before I die, I need to tell him the truth." And there it was, the moment I'd been dreading for 18 years, the moment when everything we'd worked so hard to protect threatened to come crashing down. "You can't," I said flatly. "Mom, you absolutely cannot tell Dad." "Why not? He deserves to know." "You've said that yourself." "I've never said that. David said it years ago, and we talked him out of it. And you know why? Because it would destroy Dad. Even more so now than it would have then." "You're sick, Mom. You're dying." "If you tell him now, he'll spend what time you have left feeling betrayed and heartbroken instead of loving you. And after you're gone, he won't have good memories of your marriage to sustain him. He'll just have the knowledge that the woman he loved more than anything in the world lied to him for decades. Is that really what you want your legacy to be?" She was quiet for a long time. "Then, so, I'm supposed to die with this lie between us?" "You're supposed to die letting him believe you loved him as much as he loved you. You're supposed to give him that gift, even if it's a lie. Because you owe him that much, Mom. After everything you've done, you owe him his illusions." She looked at me with this expression of profound sadness. "When did you become so hard, Jenny?" "When I found out my mother was having an affair at 15, I said. "When I spent my entire adult life protecting my father from a truth that would break him. When I became an accomplice to a lie that's poisoned every family gathering, every holiday, every moment of supposed happiness for nearly 2 decades. I stood up to leave, but she grabbed my hand. "Promise me something," she said. "Promise me that after I'm gone, you'll tell him. All of you. Michael, David, and you. Promise me you'll tell your father the truth so he can understand that I was human. That I made mistakes, but I loved him anyway. Promise me he'll know I was real, not just the fiction I pretended to be." "I can't promise that, Mom." "Please, Jenny. I need to know that someday he'll know the whole truth. I need to know I won't die leaving him in a lie." I looked at her, weak and sick and dying, and still, somehow, making it about what she needed. "I'll talk to Michael and David," I said. "But I'm not promising anything." When Dad came home, I left. I drove 2 hours back to my apartment in Hartford, and I called my brothers on a conference call and told them everything Mom had told me. "Jesus Christ," Michael said. "She lied to us for 18 years? She wants us to tell Dad after she dies," I said. "She says he deserves to know the truth." "Absolutely not," David said immediately. "No way. We've protected him this long. We're not going to destroy him after she's gone. That's beyond cruel." "I agree," Michael said. "Mom doesn't get to assuage her guilt by nuking Dad's life. She made her choices. She can live and die with the consequences." "So we keep lying?" I asked. "Forever." "Forever," Michael confirmed. "That's what we signed up for when we made this pact. We protect Dad. That's our job." And so we did. For the next 2 years, as Mom's health deteriorated, as she went through experimental treatments and brief periods of remission and eventual decline, we kept the secret. We spent Christmas together, Thanksgiving together, birthdays together, and we all smiled and pretended everything was fine. Mom died on a Tuesday in March, with all of us around her hospital bed. Dad held her hand and told her she was the love of his life, and she smiled and said, "I know." And those were her last words. The funeral was beautiful. Dad gave a eulogy that made half the town cry. He talked about their first date, their wedding day, the birth of their children, all the small moments that made up a life together. He ended with this: "Catherine Morrison was my soulmate, my partner, my best friend. I have been blessed beyond measure to have spent 42 years loving her and being loved by her. I will miss her every day for the rest of my life." After the service, after the reception, after everyone had gone home, the 4 of us sat in the living room: Dad, Michael, David, and me. Dad looked exhausted, hollowed out, like he'd aged 20 years in the past week. "I need to tell you kids something," he said quietly. We all looked at each other. I felt my heart start to pound. "I knew," Dad said. The room went completely silent. "Knew what?" Michael asked carefully. "About your mother and Richard Hartley." "I knew about the affair." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? Dad looked at each of us, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. A deep, profound sadness, but also a kind of peace. I found out about 6 months after it started, he said. I saw them together at a restaurant in New Haven when I was there for a teacher's conference. I followed them to a hotel. I knew. Why didn't you say anything? David asked, his voice barely a whisper. Because I loved her, Dad said simply. Because she was the love of my life, and I knew that if I confronted her, she might leave. And I couldn't bear that. I couldn't bear the thought of losing her. So I pretended I didn't know. I pretended everything was fine. And eventually, it seemed like the affair ended. She stopped being distant, stopped taking those mysterious extra shifts at the hospital. I thought we'd gotten through it without having to destroy everything. But you knew it started up again? I said, not as a question but as a statement. Dad nodded slowly. I suspected. There were signs. But by then I'd made my peace with it. I decided that I would rather have her, even if I had to share her with someone else's memory, than not have her at all. Does that make me weak? Probably. Does it make me a fool? Absolutely. But it made me happy. Or at least, it made me less unhappy than the alternative. The room was spinning. 28 years. 28 years we'd been protecting him, lying for him, carrying this crushing secret to spare him the pain. And he'd known all along. You let us think you didn't know, Michael said, and there was anger in his voice now. All this time, you let us carry this secret, let us lie to you, let us think we were protecting you. I didn't know you knew, Dad interrupted. Not until a few months ago. What? I asked. Your mother told me, near the end. She told me that you kids had found out years ago that you'd been keeping the secret to protect me. She asked me if I wanted her to tell you that I already knew, and I said no. Because I realized that you three carrying that secret together had bonded you in a way nothing else could. I saw the way you checked in on each other, looked out for each other. I saw the strength it gave you, and I thought maybe something good had come from all this ugliness. That's... David started, then couldn't find words. Insane, Dad offered. Twisted? Probably. But here's what I learned over 42 years of marriage. Love isn't simple. It's not the fairy tale we pretend it is. It's complicated and messy, and sometimes it means choosing to forgive things that seem unforgivable. Your mother wasn't perfect. God knows I'm not perfect. But we loved each other, in our way, and we built a life together. A good life. A life that gave us you three. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, not even for the simpler narrative where she was faithful and I was blissfully ignorant. He stood up, his joints cracking, and walked to the window overlooking Mom's garden, now dormant in the late winter cold. I want you three to let it go, he said, not turning around. The anger, the resentment, the guilt about lying to me. Let it all go. Your mother made mistakes. We all made mistakes. But she loved you kids with everything she had, and she loved me too, in her way. That's enough for me. I hope someday it can be enough for you. But it wasn't enough. Not for me, and not for my brothers. Because we'd spent 28 years building our identities, our relationship to each other, our understanding of family around this secret. And now we learned it was all based on a lie. We'd been protecting someone who didn't need protection. We'd been carrying a burden that wasn't ours to carry. In the months after Mom's death, the three of us struggled to process what we'd learned. Michael started therapy. David threw himself into his art, creating a whole series of paintings about secrets and lies that ended up being some of his most acclaimed work. And I started examining all the other ways that secret had shaped my life. I realized I'd never fully trusted my husband because I'd learned at 15 that people you love completely can lie to you completely. I realized I'd become a defense attorney partly because I'd gotten so good at defending my mother's indefensible actions that arguing for criminals felt natural. I realized I'd kept everyone in my life at arm's length because intimacy meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant the risk of betrayal. I'd let my mother's affair become the defining event of my life, and it had never even been my story to carry. 6 months after Mom died, Dad had a series of small strokes. The doctors said his brain was bleeding slowly, that the damage was irreversible. He declined quickly. 3 days before he died, I went to visit him in the hospital. He was in and out of consciousness, but in a moment of clarity, he took my hand. "I'm the luckiest man alive, Jenny," he said, his voice slurred. "I have everything a man could want." And this time, I didn't just smile and let him believe it. I squeezed his hand and I said, "I know, Dad. And you gave us everything too. You showed us what real love looks like, complicated and imperfect and fierce enough to survive anything. Thank you." He smiled and closed his eyes, and he died 2 days later, believing exactly what he wanted to believe. At his funeral, I gave the eulogy. Michael and David had both offered, but I told them I needed to do it. I needed to say something true, even if I couldn't say everything. "My father," I began, looking out at the crowd of former students, colleagues, neighbors, was a teacher. Not just by profession, but by nature. He taught American history, but what he really taught was how to be human, how to be kind, how to forgive, how to love imperfectly in an imperfect world. I paused, seeing my brothers in the front row. Michael was crying silently. David was staring at his hands. Dad used to tell us that history isn't a collection of facts, it's a collection of stories. And the stories we choose to tell, the way we choose to remember, that shapes everything. He taught us that sometimes the most important thing isn't what actually happened, but what we carry forward from it. I looked at the coffin, at the flowers Mom's garden club had sent, at the photo of my parents on their wedding day, young and hopeful and innocent of everything that was coming. My father loved my mother for 42 years. He loved her on the good days and the hard days. He loved her through sickness and health, through happiness and heartbreak. He loved her with his eyes open. And that kind of love, the kind that sees everything and chooses to stay anyway, that's the rarest thing in the world. That's what he taught us. Not that love is perfect, but that it's worth it anyway. I sat down, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of understanding. After the funeral, the 3 of us went back to the house. It felt cavernous without either parent there, full of ghosts and memories and the debris of 2 lives intertwined. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd confronted Mom 28 years earlier, and for a long time, nobody spoke. Finally, David said, "Did we waste our lives protecting something that didn't need protecting?" "I don't know," Michael said. "Maybe. Or maybe Dad needed us to think he needed protecting. Maybe that was his way of bonding with us, of creating something that would outlast him." "That's a generous interpretation," I said. "Maybe," Michael agreed. "But I'm tired of ungenerous interpretations. I'm tired of anger. I spent 28 years angry at Mom for what she did. Then I spent 6 months angry at Dad for letting us think we needed to protect him. And I'm exhausted. I want to remember the good parts now. Is that okay?" David and I looked at each other. "Yeah," David said softly. "Yeah, I think that's okay." We spent the next week cleaning out the house. We found things we'd forgotten about. Old photo albums, our childhood artwork, letters our parents had written to each other early in their marriage. We found Mom's journal too, the one David had discovered all those years ago. There were entries for every year of her life from age 16 until the cancer made it too hard to write. I read through it one night while my brothers were asleep. Most of it was mundane, appointments, to-do lists, brief reflections on her day. But scattered throughout were entries about Richard. About the affair, yes, but also about her guilt, her confusion, her genuine love for both men. One entry, dated a few months before David found the journal the first time, caught my attention. "I saw Jenny and Michael talking in the driveway today, and they stopped when I came out. They've been doing that a lot lately, having these private conversations, watching me when they think I'm not looking. I wonder if they know. I wonder if somehow they figured it out. Part of me wants them to know. Part of me wants them to confront me, so I can finally stop pretending. But another part of me is terrified. Because if they know, then I'm not just betraying Robert. I'm betraying them too. I'm showing them that love is a lie, that commitment is a joke, that everything they believe about family and loyalty is built on sand. How do I live with that? How do I look at their faces every day knowing I've shattered their innocence? And another, dated a year after we'd confronted her. The kids made me end it with Richard, and I did, but God, it's killing me. I see him at work, and I have to pretend he's nothing to me. Robert is being so sweet lately, trying so hard to make me happy, and I can't even appreciate it because all I can think about is Richard. I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible mother and a terrible wife. But I can't seem to stop wanting what I want, even when I know it's destroying everything. Maybe that's what hell is, not fire and brimstone, but this, knowing exactly what you should do and being incapable of doing it. And finally, one dated just 2 months before her diagnosis. Richard moved to Arizona today. His wife has family there, and he's retiring. We met one last time yesterday to say goodbye. He told me he'd loved me, that the years we'd had together were the happiest of his life. I told him the same thing, even though I don't know if it's true. Maybe I loved the idea of him more than I loved him. Maybe I loved how I felt when I was with him, young and desirable and alive, more than I loved the actual person. Or maybe I really did love both of them, Robert and Richard, in different ways, and I'm just not brave enough to admit that to myself. Robert came home tonight with flowers just because. He does that sometimes. Just brings me flowers for no reason except that he loves me. I looked at him, this good, decent man who has never once made me feel like I'm not enough, and I thought, I don't deserve him. I have never deserved him. But I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be the woman he thinks I am. That's all I can do now. Try to be worthy of his love, even though I know I'm not. I closed the journal and cried for the first time since Dad's funeral. Not angry tears or bitter tears, but something else, grief, maybe, for all the years we'd spent carrying this weight, for all the happiness we could have had if we'd just been honest with each other, for the simple human messiness of love and desire and weakness. The next morning, I showed the entries to Michael and David. We sat in the living room, passing the journal between us, reading our mother's private thoughts, seeing her not as a villain or a victim but just as a person, flawed and confused and trying her best and failing spectacularly, and trying again anyway. She was just human, David said finally. That's what kills me. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't evil. She was just a regular person who wanted things she shouldn't have wanted and made choices she shouldn't have made. Just like all of us do. Dad knew that, Michael said. I think that's why he stayed. Because he understood that being human means being imperfect, and he loved her anyway. Not in spite of her flaws, but including them. Do you think he was happy? I asked. Really happy? Or was he just pretending, like Mom was pretending? Michael thought about it for a long time. I think he was happy in the way that most people are happy, some days yes, some days no, but on balance, more good than bad. I think he chose to focus on the good parts and make peace with the bad parts. And maybe that's all any of us can do. We decided to keep the journal. Not to torture ourselves with it, but as a reminder of something important. That people are complicated, that love is complicated, that families are complicated, and that sometimes protecting each other means accepting that we'll never fully understand each other's choices. We sold the house 6 months later. We split everything 3 ways: the money, the furniture, the photos, the memories. We agreed to have dinner together at least once a month, just the 3 of us, to maintain the bond that had been forged in the fire of our shared secret. At our first dinner after the house sold, David raised his glass to Mom and Dad, who taught us that love isn't perfect and that's okay. To Mom and Dad, Michael and I echoed. And then David added, and to us, for surviving a secret that could have destroyed us, but somehow made us stronger instead. We drank to that, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 28 years, lightness. The weight was still there, would always be there, but it felt manageable now. Shared. Understood. It's been 3 years since Dad died. I'm 46 now, and I'm learning how to be honest. It's harder than you'd think when you've spent half your life lying. I told my husband everything last year. The whole story, from finding Mom with Dr. Hartley to learning that Dad had known all along. He listened without judgment, and when I finished, he said, "Thank you for trusting me with that." "I should have told you years ago," I said. "Maybe," he agreed. "But you're telling me now. That's what matters. My marriage isn't perfect, whose is? But it's real now in a way it wasn't before. We're building something on truth instead of on the carefully curated version of myself I used to present to the world." Michael is doing better too. He's in therapy, working through the resentment and anger he'd been carrying. He told me last month that he started to remember the good parts of his childhood without the bitter filter of the secret. "I can think about Dad's terrible jokes at dinner without immediately thinking about Mom's affair," he said. "That feels like progress." David created a painting last year that sold for more than any of his previous work. It's called The Family Secret, and it shows a dining table with 5 place settings, but only 4 chairs. The 5th chair is represented by an empty space in the painting, a void in the shape of a chair, rendered in such a way that you can see right through it to the wall behind, where there's a mirror reflecting the other 4 chairs back at themselves. "It's about absence," David explained to an art critic who interviewed him. "About the space that secrets create in families. The way they're there, and not there at the same time. The way they reflect back at us, forcing us to see ourselves differently." The critic called it a masterpiece of contemporary domestic portraiture. David called it expensive therapy. I went to therapy too, finally. I spent 2 years working through everything. The secret, the lies, the way I'd let one afternoon when I was 15 define the rest of my life. My therapist asked me once, "If you could go back and change it, would you? If you could go back to that day when you came home early, would you want to not see what you saw?" I thought about it for a long time. "No," I said finally, "because if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have the relationship I have with my brothers. I wouldn't understand that love is complicated. I wouldn't know how to forgive. And I wouldn't have learned the difference between protecting someone and controlling their narrative." "And what is that difference?" she asked. "Protecting someone is about them. Controlling their narrative is about you." We thought we were protecting Dad, but really, we were protecting ourselves from having to deal with the fallout of the truth. We were controlling the narrative of our family because we were afraid of what would happen if we let it be messy and complicated and real. She smiled. "That's a significant insight, Jennifer." It was. And it was a hard one. I think about my parents a lot these days. Not with anger anymore or bitterness, or even sadness really. Just with a kind of clear-eyed understanding. They were 2 people who loved each other in the best way they knew how. Mom's best way included loving someone else too, and Dad's best way included forgiving her for it. Was it healthy? Probably not by most definitions. Was it honest? Not even close. But it was theirs, and they lived it, and they died believing they'd had a good marriage. And who am I to say they were wrong? The truth is, we all keep secrets. We all lie, at least a little, to the people we love. We curate our histories, emphasize certain memories and bury others, construct narratives that make us feel better about the choices we've made. That's not necessarily wrong, that's just being human. But here's what I learned. Secrets have a cost. The secret my family kept cost us 28 years of honesty, of real intimacy, of being able to ask for help when we were drowning in the weight of what we knew. It cost us the ability to see our parents as whole people instead of as heroes or villains. It cost us our innocence, our trust, our ability to believe in the simple fairy tale version of love. But it also gave us something. It gave us each other. It gave Michael, David, and me a bond that most siblings never have. It gave us the knowledge that love is more complicated than we're taught to believe, and that's okay. It gave us compassion for human weakness, including our own. My father died believing he was the luckiest man alive. My mother died believing she'd been forgiven. And maybe, in the end, belief is more important than truth. Maybe the stories we tell ourselves about our lives matter more than the objective facts of what actually happened. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. But I do know this. I loved my parents. I love my brothers. I love my husband. And I'm learning to love the messy, complicated, imperfect reality of what that means, instead of the sanitized version I used to pretend was real. That's what the family secret taught me. Not that love is perfect, but that it's possible anyway. Not that honesty is easy, but that it's necessary. Not that forgiveness erases the past, but that it might be the only way forward. Last week, I visited their graves for the first time in months. I brought flowers, daisies for Mom, her favorite, and sunflowers for Dad, because he always said they reminded him of her smile. I sat on the grass between their headstones, and I told them both the truth. "I know you knew," I said to Dad. "I know you were protecting us the same way we thought we were protecting you. I wish we could have talked about it while you were alive. I wish we could have been honest with each other." And to Mom, "I understand now. Not why you did it. I don't think I'll ever fully understand that. But I understand that you were human, that you made mistakes, that you tried in your own way to do right by all of us. And I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because holding on to anger was killing me, and I'm done with that now." The wind rustled through the trees, and somewhere in the distance, I heard children laughing in the playground adjacent to the cemetery. Life going on. Always going on, regardless of our secrets, our regrets, our desperate attempts to control the narrative. I stood up to leave, but then I turned back one more time. "I hope you were happy," I said to both of them. "I hope that whatever you were to each other, whatever complicated mess it was, I hope it was worth it. I hope when you looked at each other, when it was just the two of you, you saw something real. Something worth staying for. Something worth all the lies." I don't know if they did. I'll never know for sure. But I'm choosing to believe they did because belief, I've learned, is its own kind of truth. I walked back to my car and I called Michael and David on a three-way call like we used to do in the months after Mom died. I went to the cemetery. I told them. I talked to them. I told them I forgive them. "Yeah," David said. "How'd it feel?" "Like letting go of a weight I didn't even know I was still carrying." "Good," Michael said. "That's good, Jenny. You guys want to get dinner this weekend?" I asked. "Not at the house. The new owners probably wouldn't appreciate that, but somewhere else. Just the three of us." "Yeah," they both said, almost in unison. "And maybe," I added, "we can make a new pact. Instead of keeping secrets, we'll tell the truth. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." "I can do that," David said. "Me too," Michael agreed. We made plans for Saturday, and then we hung up, and I drove home to my husband who was making dinner and who knew all my secrets now and loved me anyway. That's the thing about secrets. They only have as much power as we give them. For 28 years, I gave that secret all my power. I let it define me, shape me, hollow me out from the inside. But not anymore. My parents are gone. The secret that held our family hostage for nearly 3 decades is finally, truly over. And I'm still here, still standing, still capable of love and hope and the messy, complicated business of being human. I don't know if that makes me lucky. But standing here, alive and honest and connected to the people I love, I think maybe it makes me free. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough. I kept my family's secret for 28 years. It poisoned everything I touched, every relationship I tried to build, every moment of happiness that could have been real. But the cruelest twist of all? The person I was protecting never needed protecting in the first place. He knew. He'd always known. And he let me carry that weight anyway because he thought it would make me stronger. Was he right? I still don't know. But I do know this. Some secrets don't protect people. They just protect the lies we tell ourselves about who we are. And sometimes, the only way to be free is to let the truth burn it all down and build something new from the ashes.